join me for that. Now, where does that bring us? It brings us on to the topic of mainstream media, legacy media, and a big thank you to one of our viewers who sent me over the weekend a link through to a Times article. Let's bring it up on screen. So here we are. It's a long article. It's got a lot of images in it. The headline is "Exposed: The Illegal School Teaching Children Conspiracy Theories at a Grimy Former Nightclub. Pupils are told how to survive a plot against humanity. This is what our undercover reporter saw." So let's start off by having a look at the embedded video. I've broken it into 2 clips. Let's have a look at the first one.
This is not a playgroup. If you're not learning, there's no point us doing this. And at the end of the day, we're bringing up a generation of children that do know the truth. They won't have to be woken up because they've never been asleep.
An undercover investigation by The Times has discovered a school in Manchester being run by a group of conspiracy theorists under the radar of the authorities. I applied for a teaching post at Universal Kids via an advert I saw in The Light, a newspaper that peddles conspiracies and misinformation. I was invited for an interview by Ladan Ratcliffe, a former teacher who set up the school in 2020.
Hello, I'm Tom.
Hi.
I'm here to meet Ladan.
Okay.
Hi, Ladan. Hi. See you.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
Ratcliffe told me that the purpose of the school was to de-indoctrinate pupils from all of the lies that they were taught by the system. After 2 interviews and a trial lesson, I was then offered a position.
So this is the playground, and it also broke around the side as well.
She helped parents to withdraw their children from mainstream education, register as home educated, then send them to Universal Kids. Parents pay £30 a day for tuition at her school. Teachers at the school adhere to the Great Reset theory, a conspiracy which claims that a shadowy cabal of bureaucrats and financiers are trying to depopulate and enslave the earth.
Well, it was pretty clear there because he's straight into the subject of the Great Reset. And as far as he's concerned, it's all conspiracy theory. One of my big criticisms of this piece of work by the Times is, of course, they never get into proper discussion with the people about why they're doing what they're doing and what they're seeing worldwide that means that we should be doing these sorts of things. So it's a hit piece, there's no question of that, but I just wanted to flag up for our audience that the Great Reset is apparently just a big conspiracy theory according to the Times and the journalist there, Tom Ball. Let's have a look at a second little clip from the video.
Head teacher Ratcliffe advertises the school primarily by word of mouth, but also through social media groups for like-minded conspiracists.
So many people are getting to know about our school on a smaller scale. People are getting to know either through our teachers, our parents, when they advertise in various grids and things like that.
Amazing, you've got people coming from Shropshire.
Yeah.
There were 13 children, aged between 8 and 14 whilst I was working at the school in January, though there have been as many as 28 in the past. Despite this, Universal Kids has been able to operate for more than 3 years without any supervision or intervention from local authorities or Ofsted, the school's inspectorate.
Have you had much trouble with Ofsted here?
No, I've just told them we're not doing things that Ofsted would want.
Ofsted inspectors don't have the power to force their way onto the premises of suspected illegal schools or seize incriminating materials. The inspectorate believes that there are hundreds of illegal schools in England, exploiting the fact that there is very little oversight of home-educated children under current legislation. The vast majority of institutions prosecuted by Ofsted are religious schools, but in recent years inspectors have found a growing number of non-religious schools that have been set up by individuals radicalised by the COVID-19 pandemic into an anti-state and sometimes conspiratorial ideology.
Well, he gets there ultimately because this is all about regulation of anybody who's trying to provide an alternative education for their children. And notice how he's now talking about people who've been radicalised during COVID and have become anti-state. Diane, I'll just give you a few seconds to come in and comment if there's anything you'd like to say, having watched those clips. And of course, that's not the full video that the Times shown. It is 2 clips, so there were other points. But what do you think?
Well, Brian, I was just sitting here laughing, partially because I'm about to debunk what they've said here just a few minutes later in the news. I think it's just absolutely hilarious. This Times broadcast, whatever this was just absolutely off the mark when it comes to facts. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, of course, the news was the music in that report was one of the things that I couldn't help reacting to, because it's that mind-numbing music in the background to allow the propaganda, as far as I'm concerned, to sink in. Mark, I'm watching your face. Same to you. Just a couple of seconds if you'd like to respond.
The best thing to say is that they always use this technique of stating something as if it's self-evidently false. Like, one day you'll be eating cockroaches if Klaus Schwab has his way. They don't ever look to see what Klaus Schwab had to say. They just state this, attribute it to the so-called conspiracy theorists, and make the reader believe that by definition what these conspiracy theorists are saying is false, rather than exploring the issue to see whether it might have some truth to it. That's a common technique.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much for that. We're a good team because you were spot on the point that I'd lined up. Let's put the slide on screen. So here's Tom Ball. I know he does look a bit like Harry Potter, but I think he is the Times journalist. He said in a history lesson, I saw the children being told by their teacher, Justine, that they would one day be eating cockroaches if Klaus Schwab, head of the World Economic Forum, and Bill Gates have their way. So your point is absolutely correct, Mark, that no investigation into this by him at all. He simply states things as if it is fact. He goes on to say, in recent years, inspectors have found a growing number of non-religious schools set up by people radicalised during the COVID-19 pandemic into, and here's the key expression, anti-state and sometimes conspiratorial ideology. Now, I'm sure if Mike Robinson was with us, we'd be saying you've got to watch out for this anti-state label, because more and more legislation is coming in place to close down anybody who challenges the state. But he flags up the real problem. They're worried about the increase. At the same time, the number of homeschooled children has increased rapidly from 60,000 in 2018 to 86,000 in 2023, according to the most recent figures published by the government. But he doesn't investigate why more and more parents are pulling their children out of school. He simply ignores that. And if we go on, he then reinforces his attack on homeschooling. Sorry, come back to the slide you just put on screen, please, Stephanie. That's the one. He reinforces it by quoting Sir Martin Oliver, the Ofsted Chief Inspector, who said in the article, the quote is of him in the article, the 2022 schools bill would have given us additional powers to investigate and close down illegal schools, but that legislation was dropped. Without those powers, I remain concerned that thousands of children across England are still attending illegal schools. So the state is getting very worried it can't control education of children. The point reinforced here by a quote in the article from Bridget Phillipson, who's the Shadow Education Secretary. It's frankly shocking that this school has been operating with impunity for so long and poisoning the minds of these young people. A Labour government would legislate without delay for a register of children not in school. So vote Labour, you're going to get more state control and more focus on your children and what's happening to your children. So if we bring Tom Ball back on screen, he was crowing in the article that last year the Times exposed another, what it said was suspected illegal school set up in Sussex by anti-vaccine activists and members. Here's the dig of the far right. What's he talking about? Well, he's talking about Hope Sussex. So this is very close to home for the UK column. But oh my goodness, they're teaching people how to use tiny crossbows. He doesn't seem to want to comment on the fact that we've got relatively young children being trained to use real weapons before they're put into the early days of the armed forces in a lot of schools. So no proper investigation by this man. Let's bring in the next quote here. He said, if schools like Eton and Winchester were established to educate the future administrators of state, Universal Kids was set up with a very opposite purpose. It's a training ground for a resistance movement where children are instructed in foraging, self-defense and natural remedies to survive and defy this supposed plot against humanity. But of course, he doesn't investigate the plot. If we have a look at him in more detail, this is his LinkedIn page here. He's a specialist in the Russian language. He spent, I think, time in Russia. But basically, this appears to be the best that the Times can do. And if you have a look at his Twitter account, well, he's bringing in stories which are hit pieces on Russia. And he's also bringing in stories which are hit pieces on Andrew Bridgen by callously using comments by Andrew Bridgen's wife in order to undermine Andrew Bridgen himself. So I'm not impressed. But did Tom Ball do any investigation? Clearly no. Let's pop on screen evidence that's in front of our eyes. This one here says, in an effort to be more sustainable, elementary schools are serving insects during lunch. These issues are important. So this is not conspiracy theory. And the Time knows it. Let's pop the Times on screen. Here we are. Their headline is Eating Insects, My Creepy Crawly Breakfast Bowl. But apparently Tom Ball is completely unaware of this stuff. He's also unaware of the real fears that parents have got of their children being groomed within the very education system controlled by Ofsted. And for our audience, we'd encourage you to get back onto the UK Column website and have a look at our interviews with Kim Isherwood from Public Child Protection Wales, where she's been talking about how the minds of our children are being attacked, how they're doing that inside schools.